This lesson will be using properties to simplify expressions and solve equations. We'll first simplify an expression using properties. Here's the expression 3 times the quantity 1/3 x plus 6. My justification would be given. I then took the 3 and distributed it to each term. So my justification would be the distributive property. I then took 3 times 1/3 and got 1. This is an example of the multiplicative inverse. I multiplied 3 times 6 and wrote 18. That's an example of the substitution property. And 1 plus 18 is equal to 19. That would be an example of the substitution property. So let's use some properties to justify solving an equation. The equation is 10x plus 6 is equal to 36. So my first step is justified. We call that given. I then subtracted 6 from both sides using the subtraction property of equality. I then substituted 30 for 36 minus 6. I divided each side by 10 using the division property of equality. And 10x divided by 10 is the example of the multiplicative inverse. So x is equal to 3. Another way you could have solved that equation using different properties is I started with 10x plus 6 is equal to 36, which is my given. Again, I subtracted 6 on both sides, which is an example of the subtraction property of equality. And in this instance, I wrote 6 minus 6 is equal to 0. That's an example of the additive identity. 10x plus 0 is equal to 10x. Again, an example of the additive identity property. And in this instance, I didn't divide by 10. I multiplied by 1/10. So I used the multiplication property of equality. 1/10 times 10 is an example of the multiplicative inverse. And 1x is equal to x is an example of the multiplicative identity. So the important thing isn't how you solve the problem, but that you are able to justify each step with a property.